Okay, so hello, my name is Michelle Kaur, and this is my final case study based on the movie Beautiful Boy. Here's a little short summary if you want to pause to read. So this is Nick. He's our main character, and he is 18 years old at the time that the movie starts, really. And his age kind of fluctuates as they go back and forth in time. He lives currently with his father because both of his parents are separated throughout the entire course of the movie. He has dreams of becoming a writer because he's really good at writing and also really, really good at drawing. So that's kind of what he aspires to be. And he has an addiction, which started off as weed, and that's explained early in the movie, and then has progressed through harder substances as he's gotten older, up to the age of 18. And currently, during the time of the movie, his choice of drug is methamphetamines. So, social determinants of health. Nick's family relationship is one of the big ones that he has going on for him during the course of the movie. And those relationships actually break down over time. His dad and mom and step family, they really do a lot to try and help Nick become sober and with his addictions by sending him to rehab, detox, all of those things. Um, but as Nick keeps relapsing, his family kind of grows a little bit tired and they don't know what else to do. Um, and this kind of shows how stress and emotional strain and losing support from the people that you find most close with and are relying on can really impact an addiction. Another one is his education and opportunities. In the movie, Nick actually went to college for a little bit, for I believe a whole term, but then relapsed while he was at college and he wasn't able to continue on with that. Going to college was kind of Nick's sense of self, kind of gave him a taste of a life without addictions, and he really enjoyed that. But because of the relapse and he couldn't continue on to that, that kind of set him back. So that's another big one. And lastly, just his environment throughout the movie. Nick kind of says, like, I need to get out of here, just because everything around him really reminds him of his addiction, and he, in his mind, thinks that because he's in the spot where he's at, he can't really improve. So just that and all those things and all these social determinants line up what we learn in class that addiction is not just about a drug, but it's also the conditions around you, the stress, the relationships, and the opportunities and support systems that you have. My Miss Coswin compared to Nick's. I think I really do feel for Nick in a sense of I am a person that has someone close to my life that is struggling with addictions. And I have been there and I have tried to support that person. And I know what it kind of feels like, especially when comparing myself to Nick's family, where you do everything that you can, and that still at the time just isn't good enough, where the person just isn't ready to become sober and improve in that aspect. So I can really feel kind of the emotions of the movie, which I think was what really made me enjoy the movie a lot more and really hit home with my Miss Kossowin. I think that our biggest differences is even though I'm continuously changing as a person, I still understand my own values, my past, and the kind of person that I want to be. Well, I find that throughout the movie, Nick is kind of trying to reach a place of sobriety where he can develop that true sense of self. Um, so I kind of wrote it here saying, because Nick has spent so much time growing up in these important developmental years on substances, he has no real concept of who he is and who he wants to be without being on substances. So that also makes sobering up and becoming sober not just a scary process for anyone in general, but for Nick especially because he doesn't know who he is besides being on those substances. What's at stake? Pretty simple for Nick. Almost everything is at stake. His relationship with his family, his dreams of becoming a writer, going to school, doing all having the future and being who he wants to be. Um, and this is especially hard because it's almost a little bit like self-sabotage of Nick knows where he wants to go, and what his goals are, but he's in a way almost letting them slip away from him just because he keeps falling into relapse and then he lands at a point of he doesn't know where to move forward from there. So everything at stake, basically everything of Nick's wants, his relationships, but also Nick's life because he has overdosed twice. And that's a really big point in the movie as well. The most significant challenge that I saw while watching the movie is that Nick doesn't fully comprehend and see the seriousness of his addiction until it becomes a point where it's very critical and dangerous for him. He believes that he can still be on certain substances and stay in control even when he's in recovery because he feels like meth makes him feel great. He struggles to really understand why he shouldn't use it until he gets to a point where he's at, rock bottom. And that can make it really hard to stay sober, which is what we see. It's kind of like a repetitive cycle for Nick where he hits rock bottom, he wants to be sober, he finally gets sober, but then he doesn't understand why he can't take substances, because they make him feel better. And he gets to that point where he wants to party again. And then it's just a kind of repetitive cycle of then he goes on substances until he hits rock bottom again. This lack of insight is what keeps him stuck in this cycle of relapse. What are the future risks? It talks about in the movie that his brain function could continue to decline, especially with long-term meth use. He has a higher risk of overdosing again because he has already done it twice. Losing his life that he's hoped for and that he's wanted for so long as he's grown up. Like he can't be a writer, he can't go to school because of his addiction. And in most seriousness, death, because he has overdosed twice. And if he keeps using, he doesn't see the severity of it. And that's kind of the next step for him. And it's also talked about in the movie that, that is what's most likely going to happen if he continues on the path that he's on. How I would support Nick, I would support Nick by using a non-judgmental harm reduction approach. I would focus on building trust and helping him understand his triggers, and setting small, realistic goals. For Nick throughout the movie, he really does, he hits rock bottom and then he's like, I need to get sober, I need to get sober right now. And I think that's one of his biggest struggles because he wants to take these huge leaps, but then he gets to a point where he finally gets to there and then there's nothing left for him to do. So he feels the need to seek out sort of some type of fulfillment, and he finds that within substances. So having those realistic small goals for him to continue reaching even after he's gotten sober, I think would be very beneficial for him. And also just reminding him that relapse is a part of recovery. It's brought up in the movie, and I really, really enjoyed that. So just reminding him of that and that he's also not being judged for seeking help and getting help. And that's also a really big important point for Nick because in the movie he does say multiple times to his dad, like, it feels like you're judging me. It feels almost like I'm not the person that you want me to be, and that's why I'm here. So just letting him know that he's not being judged for seeking supports, I think would be very beneficial for him as well. Biopsychosocial spiritual approach. This approach is important because Nick isn't just dealing with addiction, but he's also showing signs of mental health struggles, stress, challenges, and how he sees himself. The biological part matters because meth affects the brain and increases the risk of overdose. The psychological part matters because he uses substances to cope with anxiety, identity issues, and emotional pain. The social part includes his family breaking down and losing school opportunities and pressure he feels to succeed. The spiritual part is about how he feels a disconnect from a sense of purpose, which makes recovery obviously a lot harder. By looking at all four of these areas together, we can understand the full picture of Nick's addiction and give him support that actually fits his needs. Local legislation to consider. When assessing Nick, I would need to keep a few key laws in mind. The Mental Health Act, which is important because if he becomes a danger to himself, which he is shown to be because he overdoses on substances. The Controlled Drugs Act, which outlines laws of possession and risks connected to meth and other substance uses, which could be important for Nick. And I also would have to follow confidentiality. I wish I knew how to say this correctly. But just protecting his personal health information and privacy during treatment. These laws guide of how I can assess Nick, what safety steps I can take, and how Nick's information can be shared while still respecting his rights, all of which are very important. Helpful community resources, CMHA. They work for mental health, counseling, and addiction services, something that I think Nick would really benefit from. AA or NA, Nick did participate with those two resources in the movie and said that they really did help throughout it. And he even became a counselor for other people, which is really great. So I'd want to continue that with him. And then a detox or rehab facility, obviously, I would consider this to be step one, even though he does it kind of in the beginning of the movie and throughout because his dad kind of pushes him to do it. I think just sitting down and explaining why it would be beneficial would definitely help him out a lot. And altogether be a great resource for him. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out.